What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over items in our inventory. So we have all sorts of stuff working in our inventory system. We have weapons, equipment, attaching, removing, interchanging, like if you have one weapon and you click another one, it selects that one. And we do have somewhat logic set up for items, but we never actually had the ability to pick one up or use one. So again, I have more boxes. I need to get some sprites for some of this stuff, or some models, I mean. But if I go ahead and take some damage, I have two items. Technically, this that top bar that I had, that blue bar on my HUD, was considered my shields when we did this in the third-person tutorial series. However, this is probably going to be the mana bar from now on. So, if we look at this, I have a health potion, and I'm going to add it to my inventory. And then I also have a mana potion, and I'm going to add that to my inventory. Now, when I open up my inventory menu, I have two options, health potion and mana potion. When I use my health potion, you can see that my health goes up. You know, of course, it only goes to the maximum value. And mana potion, I can refill my mana as well. So you can see both my bars are full again after using my potions. Other than the consumable part, where they should disappear after using them, this is going to be a full guide to using items in our third-person tutorial / action RPG series. And also, with this, you're going to be able to modify it so each item has its own ability. We're not going to restrict the items to specific abilities. We're going to make an event that we can call, and we can perform whatever logic we want on whatever event. So we could have like an experience booster. We could have, you know, some one-time consumable that performs an attack or an animation or some sort of interaction. Don't worry, we still have more to do with the inventory and more to do with that sort of system as a whole. But that's kind of where we're at today. So we're going to get these items and potions set up. So first things first, before we get started, there's two things in particular that you should know. So first of all, we're on episode 22, 23 of the third-person tutorial series, really the RPG series. So I'll leave a link to the entire playlist for all the third-person episodes right here, if you'd like to get caught up and check out everything that we've done to get to this point. Otherwise, we will be using data tables today. Specifically, we did make this data table in this episode right here. It's not required that you do so. I'll kind of cover it again. But if you want to know more about data tables and why I chose everything I did, it would be useful if you check that out. Okay, and we can go ahead and get started. So, what we need to do is we need to make new classes just like always. So if you've been following the series, we will have this default item.h class. Now, we don't have to change anything with this right now. We will be adding a blueprint implementable event to it later, but for now it doesn't really matter. Just make sure you have this default item class. Remember, default item is the parent of pretty much everything. Like default equipment is a child, and default weapon is also a child of default item. But at the end of the day, an item itself can just be an item. So just a potion, just a consumable, just something in our inventory. So while weapons and equipment are items, potions and consumables are also items. So we need something just for that. It's not a weapon or a piece of armor or anything like that. What I've done is I've added a new blueprint class, and I've used the default item class as the parent. Once you do that, call it whatever you want. I call it base item BP. Alright, then we can go into this. And if we go to the viewport, of course, the base items, every time I do base, it's really meant to be a wrapper class. So this is meant to be the parent class. The actual like mesh and logic for that specific item will always be done in the children classes. But things that are going to persist through all the classes of this type, so all items such as equipping and dropping them behavior, will be handled in here. So I have base item BP self. You have a default scene root that spawns in here no matter what when you make a new class. If this is just the default scene root, you can override it with something like the static mesh by just dragging it on top. I don't normally do that just because I don't really feel the need to. I haven't really run into a lot of scenarios where that need to be the case. However, it is a little bit cleaner. So feel free to do that if you want. Either way, I've added a static mesh component and a box collision component. To do that, just hit add component, look for static mesh, and add component and look for box collision. I've left this one as static mesh, but I called the other one interaction box. If you're familiar with the series, we will have these interaction boxes on our other pieces of equipment and weapons. This is basically how we can interact with it. So how close we have to be before we can, say, pick it up off the ground as loot and different things like that. Okay, so I've made them and I've kept them their default sizes, again, because this is the base item BP, so I don't feel the need to change anything with it. I did change the collision to overlap all on the static mesh because I don't want any of the collectibles or the consumables that we're picking up off the ground to be block all. You know, if that specific logic needs it when we use it later, that's fine. But remember, this base item BP is basically a method of holding and transferring data and picking them up and adding them to our inventory. The logic that happens and that occurs when we use the item can be completely different. Alright, now in the event graph, we need these three things set up. These two events, onComponent begin overlap and onComponent end overlap of this interaction box, are actually the exact same as the weapon one. So if you have followed the series, I'd recommend just going to like base weapon BP, literally grabbing this stuff, copying it, and pasting it. It should be right in here. In fact, all of this. Same with this, the set correct item name. I'd say grab it all, copy it, and paste it. We've already explained what it does, and we've already implemented it here, so you might as well. The short version is once we begin overlapping with the interaction box, we make sure that it's the character that was interacting. Set it to be, yes, we're interacting, we're overlapping them, so we know we can interact with this object. We spawn a widget that then sets the correct item name, so we know what the name of the item we're overlapping is with. So that's how it says, like, equip or add health potion to inventory. And then we add that to the viewport so the player can see it. When we leave overlap with interaction box, we do the same thing where we check if it's the character, but then we say we're not overlapping anymore, so we remove all instances of that widget. Okay. And set correct item name is just basically, it's a method, it's an event and a function that we'll need to set the correct name, such as health potion or whatever. But we do need it in the parent class because we're going to be using it in the children classes. So having it here allows us to use it in the child classes without making a new one every time. You could do that, but there's really just no point. So if you just have an empty event here in your base item BP, we can call this same event and handle it in the children classes. And we've done this for things like the dagger. This is all we had. This I'm calling because we set it up in the parent class, and then I just pass the widget reference and set the name. We're going to do the same thing for the item. So you don't need anything else in your graph. Everything we've already technically done, but if you don't have it or you don't need it, then feel free to use what you need. Now, if we go here, at this point we've made our wrapper class and we are good to go. We can make our children classes. So what I normally do is right click and create child blueprint class off of the base. I've done it twice in this case, one for a health potion, one for a mana potion. After I did that, I look at my class defaults on my base class if I need anything. You can see I haven't set anything on here. So let's go to the children classes and see what we need to set. Now, we have two methods of setting objects up. So we have a bunch of things in here that we can use to assign variables. So first things first, we have the item type, the name of the item, the weight of the item, and the ID of the item in the database. Now, if you don't want to use the data table or a database, then you can just use these variables here, and you don't need to watch that data table episode. However, I would like to use the database and the data table because it is much more useful down the line. So I still have the ability to set these variables here, and I do set them here for my use so that I know what these things are. But we're really just going to read the data from the data table. So speaking of the data table, let's open that up. Should be in data. First things first, we had this F item object. This is a structure. So the way you make this, if you don't want to watch the data table episode, is you go blueprints, structure, called mine F item, and this holds everything that we need our item class to have. So in this case, I have name, weight, and the class we want to spawn when we use it from our inventory. I want to spawn a health potion because right now, sure, we're just using it from our inventory and we're healing. But I may want to spawn a health potion, attach it to our character's hand, and play an animation like he's drinking the potion to heal. So I need the default item class. And the way you figure this out, the way this works, is you type in the class that you need to spawn and choose a class reference. It won't let you put an object reference in here, or it actually probably would, but I don't know how that would work since this is going to be read-only. But the class reference you can set up as the type, so we know it's going to be a type of default item. Okay, so that's what the structure looks like. And then in the data table itself, here's what I have for this. I have 2 rows. I have a health potion and a mana potion. I made them weight 0 because I don't want them. You should. I think you should be able to hold as many health potions or as mana potions as you want. We might want to put like a limit on it or a capacity, something like that. But I don't think it should over encumber you based on health potions and stuff. You can put it whatever you want though. But I put 0.0. I put my 2 names. And then for the classes that I put to spawn, if you made all your children classes that you have currently, you can just go ahead and put them in. So I put in the health potion BP and the mana potion BP. Whoops. And the mana potion BP. So with this, you grab the index in this data table, and that's how I'm getting my values. That's how we set it up in that data table episode. So that ID we have right here, health potion is 0, mana potion is 1, because that ID is actually going off the row name here. So 0 for the health potion, 1 for the mana potion. Okay? And that's how that works. So now with that done, what we need to do is go into our child class and set up anything that we care about that would be different from the base class. So if you want to change your static mesh to something like a potion, I don't have anything, so I made it yet another cube, but you could make it whatever you want. I'm going to get assets and put them here because we're getting too many things that are just cubes. Same with interaction box. Feel free to change the size. Make sure that your static mesh does overlap all and generates overlap events. I should have mentioned this before, but on the base item BP, make sure that generate overlap events is still checked. Not just that you set to overlap all, but... Okay. And then remember I said we'd be overriding the event set correct item name that we put in the base item BP. We're going to do that here. So literally just type event set item set correct item name. Do this in all your items and just pass in the widget reference that comes into that and give it the name of the item. Again, not entirely necessary that we even set this here. We could just set it to the item name that we have in the class, like in our class defaults. We don't necessarily have to set that specific value. We could just automatically set it here, but whatever. It makes little difference. You can do it 3 or 4 ways I can think of, and they would all work. Whether you want to use the data table, just class defaults, if you just want to set it to the name of this class, there's all sorts of different ways to do it. That's how I'm doing it. Do it for the mana potion as well. And then I had this new event called use item. And so use item is going to be one that we're going to make right now because we don't have this currently. It's pretty simple. Basically, we can have this event in the default item code class, and it's going to make it so every single child, every single consumable, every single item that is just a type of item, or really a child of base item BP, would be the thought, but you could use it anything that's a child of default item. And when you use it, you are going to, do whatever you want with it. So in this case, we're going to heal if it's a health potion, and if it's a mana potion, we're going to regain mana as well. Okay? So to do that, if you go back to your default item, and you can close your editor and all so you can build, all I've done is added this simple little function. It's a blueprint implementable event, and it's blueprint callable. So it's a blueprint implementable event because you could definitely set up logic to use items in code. It would be very easy, but you would need child classes of all. You would need a child class for each item, so that way you could call use item and fill out the logic for it. In this case, I don't particularly want to do that. I usually make children of a blueprint class. So again, base item BP is the child here, and then I make children of that. I don't make code classes for all of them, but you absolutely could. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's probably more efficient that way if you actually look at it, but I think it's way easier this way, and I've never had issues with it in the past. If we end up needing to adjust anything, it's very easy to adjust. We can just copy over our logic to the code. It's not bad at all, and we can cover that later. So anyway, once you make this use item, you don't fill anything out for it in the CPP file like you would, since it is a blueprint implementable event. So as soon as you make that, you can run your program again, run Unreal again. And now all children of that, like I said, will have access to this use item event. I don't use anything, I don't fill it out in base item BP because you should never really be using a base item. You should be using a child of it. And then in the health potion and mana potion BP, I just do the logic that I'd want to do. So I handle event use item, and you just literally look it up like this. I get the owner of the item. Now, this won't actually work currently. We're going to have to fix something. Well, not fix something. We're going to have to add something here in a minute that'll make this work. But currently, this item does not have an owner. Just so you're aware. So we will be setting that here in a few minutes, but we're going to get the owner of this item, which is going to be the character that used it from their inventory. So this will work even in a multiplayer scenario. It's just as whoever is truly the owner of this object. We cast and we make sure it's a base character BP. It doesn't really matter. You could cast your third person tutorial character here. This just happens to be my blueprint class. It really doesn't make a difference who you cast it here to my knowledge. And then I call a function on it. I call heal. I already had this heal function from long, long ago in the series. Probably this third, fourth episode. And I'll heal the character by 0.3, which is 30%. And then I destroy the actor immediately after. So I heal and then I destroy. If I was going to attach it to the character's hand and, let them play an animation, that's totally different. And I can absolutely do that. But we're not covering that today, so I just go instantly to destroy. That way I don't spawn a cube directly on the character and just, let them sit there. Then with the mana potion, again, the blue bar was technically armor before because the third person tutorial was different. It wasn't an RPG at the start. So, feel free to make a heal mana function. And I'll show you these two functions after just in case you want to see them. But it's the same thing. I get the owner. And just as an example, I did this on purpose so you can see. I use the third person tutorial character here. So it doesn't matter which cast you do, whether it's the code or the blueprint class. And then you can call, heal armor, regain mana, whatever. I did 30% on that as well. And I destroyed the actor immediately after. Just to get you caught up, if we go to these functions. So I have a heal and a heal armor, and this is what they look like. I've covered these a very long time ago, but they're very simple functions. We have a health and an armor amount, or again, a mana amount if you want to do that. And all I have is an amount that we pass in, which was our 30%, our 0.3. We add that to the health or the armor, and then we make sure, it doesn't go above or below certain values. So very simple, nothing confusing there. And if we go back to Unreal, we now have to set up the logic to call event use item first of all, but then also to set the owner properly. Now I'm actually going to be setting the owner in the widget. It sounds a little funny, but when we equip these items, they go to our inventory. I don't use them right away off the ground, and so I don't want to also have a specific object reference for each item in my inventory. Instead, what I do is I have that class reference, I set the corresponding variables, and then we are going to spawn it, call use item on it, set the owner, all that good stuff, and then we're going to destroy it or do whatever we want with it after that. So for that, we have a few widgets here. We have our single inventory item widget, and this is the button that we actually click on in our inventory when we go to use something. So this is a lot of stuff that we have done in the past. We've continued to make this function bigger and bigger, so I'm not going to cover a lot of this. But the important parts are this. We have retrieve item from ID. This is from our database logic. And so we filled all this out before, including for the item. Even though we didn't have actual items to use this here, we did fill this logic out. If you didn't fill it out because you didn't have them, go ahead and fill it out now. But the long story short, we get the row of the item ID we put on the item, and we get it. We get that row in the data table. We get the class to spawn and spawn that actor. So remember 0 was the health potion, 1 was the mana potion. That's where it comes into play. We cast to the default item just to make sure. It does tell you that you don't have to. However, that actually isn't completely correct. You may need to under certain circumstances. Already covered that. We set the object reference, and then we set the variables that we need. You could set the owning player pawn here, or excuse me, the owner here if you want. What I did was actually just I went into here on the switch on e-item type. If this was item before, we didn't do anything. We only had weapon and equipment. So this is where our new logic is today. So if the switch on e-item type is an item, I make sure that the object reference is valid. And then I'm making sure that the owning player pawn is a base character BP to set the owner. And then I call use item on it. So just a few refreshers. Object reference is a default item. Weapons, equipment, and our items here, our consumables, are all children of default items, so this works. If you drag it into the scene, grab it, and then right-click and hit Convert to Validated Get, you will be able to drag off and call any functions that are of default items. So we can call use item here. That's first things first. That's how that works. I'm just going to do this logic under here for you. And then we get the owning player pawn. This will be accurate because we did set the owner of the widget when we created it. So whatever player created this widget will be here. We can cast to our base character BP or a third person character. And then, again, you can see it up above, so I don't have to redo all that, but I just want to show you how that worked. We have all those nodes. The last one is the set owner, which you drag off of object reference, set owner. And then the new owner should be the new owner should be the cast. Just like that. So just in case this is a little bit ugly looking or anything, that's what it should be like. You make sure it's the character or a character that you could have as the object owner for this. Set them as the owner and then use the item. Alright guys, and that's about it. There's still a few things we need to do with it, such as disposing of these consumables once they're complete. And also, just in general, once we pick up items around the world, we should, get rid of them from the world. That was intentional, I just haven't set that up yet, but we probably should do that. Or at least cover it, so that we know how to do it if we want to take it outside of a debugging sense. But yeah, when we use them in here, and I can use it through the keyboard method as well if I'd like, either way. I still like using the mouse for this. RPGs just feel good for me like that. But yeah, so using them, they should get taken away from our inventory, or we should have perhaps a quantity that we can use. So how many times we can use it, different things like that. We need to have drops for characters. So once we actually beat up an opponent, you know, not only do they give us experience, which actually they don't currently, but they will, and they also need to drop us items or have a chance to drop items. And we need to be able to remove things from our inventory, so maybe discard it, you know, or when, like we said, when we use it, sure, get rid of it, but discard it or drop it on the ground, you know, spawn it where it's there. Maybe other players can pick it up in multiplayer mode. So there's still plenty we have to do. The inventory is one of the biggest systems in an RPG in terms of all the little nuances and the things you have to handle, because there are so many cases. But yet another thing down. Now we can use consumables and items. So anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. It does more than anything for the channel, and I just really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership subscribers and my Patreon subscribers and supporters. Thank you guys so much for continuing to believe in me in the series. I am so excited to continue. I love making this content, and I absolutely love seeing where we can go with it. We've got a long way to go, but we are getting there. Anyway, guys, if you need any assistance with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. That's all I got for you today, guys, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.